Good evening. It is November the 5th, 2016, and we are ready for my winter forecast for Western Kentucky only. I'm not forecasting for the entire United States. This is just for specifically Western Kentucky, where I live for this upcoming winter, 2016-2017. Let's go ahead and get into it. This is the ENSO predictions that I'm predicting. ENSO is the ENSO region. That is a region that is between Peru and Ecuador in the Pacific and the Pacific Ocean, and it is specifically ENSO Nino 3.4 region, the Nino 3.4 region, and we tend to measure those temperatures there. When you have warmer than normal temperatures there, then you see what we call an El Nino, which in our region brings warmer and drier conditions. But if that's just based off of an El Nino, then that is what we are getting. We had an El Nino last year. We had more than just El Nino thriving our weather, so we did get the warm, but we didn't get the dry. We got some snowy weather in there last year as well. It was kind of an odd winter last year. We had an El Nino, but we had around 20.5 inches of snow here at my place. Our average is 9.7 in Paducah. The La Nina is when you have cooler than normal temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region, so it's the exact opposite of El Nino. We tend to call them brother El Nino and sister La Nina. And in a La Nina in our region, we tend to get those cooler temperatures dipping down into the central and eastern United States with a dry and warm southern tier and a wet portion in our region meeting up with that cold polar Arctic jet stream. And when that happens, we tend to get a lot of storms that ride up and along our region. During a neutral, which is where you don't have either warmer or colder than normal temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region, then you tend to get wetter and colder conditions in our region as well, although the cold tends to come down further south and a little bit more pronounced during a neutral rather than a La Nina winter. Now, weak La Nina and a cool neutral this year, either way, it is going to still bring about the same impacts. ENSO model predictions, this is what two different models are predicting for the ENSO, and that is the IRI CPC is a bunch of models. These are a bunch of dynamic and statistical models all put together, and the yellow line right here is your mean, the average of all of those models together, and you can tell that it is showing that we stay in a very, very weak La Nina. Same for the CFSV2 forecast for the Nino 3.4 region. It is showing that as well. But what you see in both of those is that around midwinter we start to go back up towards neutral, and that is going to be something we're going to have to watch very closely, because if that happens, then, like I said, neutral conditions, the code is more pronounced rather than a weak La Nina. But a weak La Nina, if we have one this year, it's not going to be that far from a neutral ENSO. So either way, it's going to bring about the same impacts, and that is that we are going to see a lot of frequent code shots coming down from the Arctic pole into our area. We call that the polar vortex. Teleconnections, these are just different connections that the ocean has around the world, and these oceans, they bring weather, they affect our weather here as well, believe it or not. This is a negative. We have an NAO, which is the North Atlantic Oscillation, and you can have two different types of those. You can have an east-based and a west-based. This year, we are going to have a negative NAO is what I'm forecasting. Right now, it's kind of around average because of a lot of warming taking place up there. But when you have a negative NAO, you tend to get a lot of Greenland blocking, which is where you just basically stop all the weather patterns from going out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and they tend to ride up along the East Coast. The ones that ride up along the East Coast tend to come from our area, and that is when they're bringing a lot of snow to our area, or ice, or just a bunch of rain, depending on their track. And then they like to hit that wall, which is the jet stream, and then they ride up along the East Coast, and then that is what is called Greenland blocking. We get a lot of cold and snowy weather when that happens. When you have a positive NAO, we get the exact opposite. You get warm, dry conditions. With a west-based NAO, which is what I'm predicting for this year, you look at all this purple right there. That is colder than normal temperatures digging into the central and eastern parts of the United States, almost the entire country to be exact. And an east-based La Nina, or rather NAO, you get warm in the east and cold in the central and western parts of the United States. Another teleconnection is an AO, which is the Arctic Oscillation. When you get an positive phase of the AO, which is what we have not been having lately, you get a lot of zonal flow. When you get zonal flow, you get a lot of mild air that comes from the Pacific, and it rides into our region. we end up with a lot of warmer temperatures than normal. When you get a negative NAO, look at that big trough that dips down into our region. When you get that, a trough brings colder weather, a ridge brings warmer weather. You get the ridge, pump the ridge in the west, so the west coast is getting baked while you get colder than average temperatures. And this is also in the eastern and central portions of the United States, and this is also associated with Greenland blocking as well. Another teleconnection is the PDO. When you have a positive PDO, you tend to have the jet stream go something like this, and it pumps the ridge like I was just talking about in the west, and then you get that trough in the east where you get the colder temperatures. In a negative PDO, you get the exact opposite. You get the cold in the west, and you get the ridge in the east, and that brings warmer than normal conditions. I expect that we see a positive PDO this year, and that is going to bring about some colder than average temperatures. The teleconnections also is a PNA. We have a positive PNA being forecasted this year, meaning that we will have another ridge in the west, trough in the central and eastern parts of the United States, bringing colder weather that is forced south from the Arctic. And then the PNA, when you get a negative PNA, you tend to get the exact opposite. You get that trough in the west, and you get the ridge in the east. A bunch of different teleconnections, and they're all pointing towards colder weather for our region. Current SST anomalies, which are sea surface temperature anomalies, right now the La Nina as of November the 5th was at negative 0.7. It is going up and down. For it to be classified as a La Nina, it has to stay below the negative 0.5 threshold for at least 3 consecutive months, and it can't do that when it's going up and down all the time. But you see these warmer temperatures just east of Africa. That tends to weaken our easterlies. When it weakens the easterlies, the La Nina goes away, and that is what I expect to happen. We have a lot of subsurface temperatures up here. You see all this warm right here. We have a lot of warmer than average temperatures just below the surface that this map does not pick up on, and that warm water just below the surface will start to rise up. So expect this to become more red and covered. More red covered right here, meaning that we will see a positive PNA and a positive PDO with that. When you also get colder winters here, you tend to see colder sea surface temperatures just northwest of Hawaii. Right now we have a little bit of a mixed signal, mostly warm than cold, but you can't go all the way up towards Japan to look for this. You're looking just to the northwest of Hawaii, so mostly warm than cold. But the last 7-day change has been showing that we've been seeing a lot of cooling here, so this might begin to dissipate and start to become more cold. As you can tell, just to the north of it, we have a lot of colder than average temperatures as well. Now, in the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of our region's weather, when the storm systems come out of the South United States and bring all the snow to our region, then we are going to have a lot of warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico to provide moisture to those storm systems. And so we have a very high chance of seeing a lot of storms this winter that are going to be bringing some pretty dosed amounts of moisture with them. You can tell that we have blocking up here just to the just around Greenland, those warmer than average temperatures, pumping the ridge up there, putting the trough in the eastern United States. There's that negative NAO right now. Like I said, it's not very weak. It's around average right now because we just have a bunch of mixed signals, but expect it to get colder as the winter starts to go in, because all of these other teleconnections will make the jet stream pattern favor this area to get colder in the long term. Short-term SST predictions, we have a negative NAO persisting, negative AO persisting. When you have a negative AO in October, then you tend to get colder than average temperatures the rest of the winter. We did have a very negative AO this October, so that's another sign of a cold winter. And we have had a positive PNA also, and that is expected to persist as well. So in the short term, all three of these are forecasting a colder winter as well. My analogs, these are all the years that I think are similar to this winter. And if we're going off of these analogs right here, which is looking at the neutral based ENSO prediction, and then the teleconnections that we just went over, you get a very, very cold winter in parts of the Midwest and the East, as well as the central United States, including the South as well. If you're just going off of a weak La Nina, you tend to get a lot of your cold stacked up into the northern plains, but still, it's going to be chilly right here on these portions of our region. And you tend to get a southeast ridge. That southeast ridge in a weak La Nina brings warmer than average conditions to the southeast, and that's a key ingredient for our storm system and our active storm track. When you get that high pressure it brings south winds like this, and when it rotates in that clockwise direction, a lot of your storm systems are going to ride between that ridge and between that trough, and that is going to be right there where you see those temperature anomalies that are just about average. That is where you are expecting to see the storm track. I did not get these anomalies from anybody else or get these analogs from anybody else. I made these maps, and it turned out perfect for the storm track for our region. Um, the October Siberian snowfall. We had some record snowfall reported in parts of Russia this year in Siberia. Look at these pictures credited from the Weather Channel, where I got them from. Just crazy amounts, record amounts in Siberia. When you tend to see a lot of this snowfall in October in Siberia, that is when that is related and specifically correlated with the North America winters, and they tend to bring a lot of cold air to those regions because you weaken the stratospheric cooling event. You start to get more warming there. When the stratosphere warms, you start to see the polar vortex weaken. It wobbles, it moves south, it hits our region, and you start to get a lot more cold air outbreaks. Month by month breakdown, December. These are my analogs for it. I agree with the temperatures. I don't agree with my analogs for this. I don't think we're going to be that dry. We'll still get about average precipitation and snowfall, below average temperatures though. And I think we'll see one major snowstorm, which is about 5+ inches in our region, and about 0 to 2 minor snow events, about 0 to 4 inches. January, we're starting to see winter really set in and begin because our ENSO is starting to weaken back towards a neutral, which pronounces more cold. And so when our weak La Nina starts to fade away, that's just one more ingredient that is going to be a factor into our winter on how cold we get. I think that we'll see more cold than this on my analog here. And once again, I still don't think that we'll be that dry, but it is trying to pick out our dry conditions that we're in right now. I think that this winter we will break that with above average precip, above average snowfall in January, below average temperatures for sure. I think we'll see 1 to 3 minor snow events, which is 0 to 4 inches in our region, and one major snowstorm as well. February, 0 to 3 minor snow events, one major snowstorm, I think, below average temperatures, above average precip and snowfall. I think we'll see cold the first half. I do agree with this. I don't think we'll be as warm in New England. Kind of move all of these anomalies east a couple of states. And I think it's picking up on that active storm track in the south and New England. I do like that for February. It will be cold the first half, I think, but I I think that winter's grip is going to begin to lighten as we go, into the second half of February. Last couple of winters, we've had a lot of backloaded winters in our region where we tend to get more cold and snow January, February, March, and we don't get as much in November, December. This year, I think it's similar but a little bit different. I think we'll get all 3 months of winter this year: December, January, February, and we won't have to worry about getting those backloaded winters where we get all of our cold and snow in just 2 or 3 months. So I think that we won't be lagging our winter as long into March as we usually do. So it begins to lighten up at the end of February, but I think we'll still remain below average in temperatures because we'll be so cold in the first half. March, 0 to 1 minor snow event. It's very hard in March because by the beginning of March, it's either 70 degrees or there's a foot of snow on the ground in our region, so it can go either way. I think we'll have below average temperatures, above average precipitation. Like I said, the snowfall is uncertain because of how uncertain March is here in our region. Final overall forecast: below average temperatures, above average precip, above average snowfall. Snowfall totals could be anywhere between 15 to 30 inches, much colder than last year instead of 9. Several bitter Arctic intrusions, frequent snow events, and I think we'll have that active storm track through the south between the high and low pressure. Some mixed events as well with that storm track as well in case the high pressure bumps the storm track into our region. And I think that the drought that we're in right now will end this winter, and my confidence in all this is 60%. The models support this idea. These are 3 different models all supporting that we will have a cold winter this year. And a bunch of meteorologists as well are predicting 35 meteorologists out of 44 predicting below average temperatures, and 25 of them predicting out of 33 above average snowfall. So my final thoughts is that I want to thank you for your time and attention during my winter forecast, and whether it snows or not, or it's not cold, or it is cold, have a fantastic winter 2016-2017.